Hi and welcome. The morning after Liam Carter disappeared into a hotel on First Avenue with a woman who wasn't his wife, he saw Maya for the first time as a stranger. She stood on the curb outside the courthouse in a raincoat, hair damp, one hand shielding her belly as a black Bentley coasted up like a quiet verdict. Adrien Voss, billionaire developer and storm in a suit, stepped out the city. Reflected in his polished shoes, he opened the door for Mia with a care that hurt to watch. Liam had already signed the divorce papers. What he hadn't signed away was the heartbeat. Seattle grays you out. First with clouds, then with decisions. Liam Carter had learned to squint at the line between compromise and surrender. He ran a boutique architecture firm from a brick nook in Pioneer Square. 2 junior designers. One espresso machine that hissed like a tired dragon. Projects came in. Flurries. Restaurants. A co-working space. A community center whose funding evaporated at the last minute. Then nothing for weeks. Maya Ortega before she became Maya Carter. And then Maya not. Anything had been his north. An urban planner with a spine of steel and a habit of quoting Jane Jacobs at parties. She'd moved through the world like it was a blueprint she could annotate. They married under lights, strung between Douglas firs on Bainbridge Island, vowing to make cities kinder. For a time their missions dovetailed. She drafted neighborhoods. He sketched how those neighborhoods would hold light. Then the drought hit. Professionally and privately, rents climbed. Clients paid late. Liam stared at invoices and felt a pinch no accountant could fix. When Maya landed a grant to pilot a human-centered housing project, Harbor Lifetime, Liam felt pride curdle into fear. She had purpose and leverage. He had an inbox full of circling back. The night with Serena Vale began as escape and ended as a confession. He told himself it was nothing. Just a drink after a panel discussion on adaptive reuse at the Sorrento Hotel. Serena spoke like a flicker. Quick and bright. She laughed at the right beats and touched his wrist with fingers. Warm and precise. In the room, he forgot he belonged to anyone. Then remembered. Too late. He recognized his face in the dark. Another man lying to himself. Maya found the receipt before she found the courage to ask. When she asked, she did it standing by the kitchen sink, palm flat on the counter. Was it one time, she said. Voice steady, eyes. Not one time, he said, knowing what counted and what didn't. Do you love her? No. Do you love me? The truth arrived wrecked and late. Yes, he said. But the word had the texture of ash. They both tried to board a ship. They'd already missed counseling. Post-it notes with apologies, reworked schedules. A 2-week break to clear the air, which is another way to say breathe different air. The city didn't slow down to help them. When she told him she was pregnant, the sky had cleared to an improbable blue. They sat on the back steps, knees touching. And Liam felt terror and hope. Share a chair. It's yours, she said. We conceived before. Before the hotel, he cried. He vowed. He failed. 2 weeks later he met Serena again. This time in an office with a view the city at a flattering angle. He told himself. He was ending it. He told himself she understood. Didn't notice how expertly the door closed behind him. The divorce papers came in a manila envelope that smelled like toner. They agreed to kindness on paper. In person, they drifted like strangers across a crosswalk, each pretending not to see the other's shadow. The morning, in front of the courthouse, the Bentley stopped like a period. Adrien Voss stepped out, a name that showed up in opens and ribbon cuttings. Someone whose money was a weather system. Maya didn't look at Liam, but she nodded when Adrien offered shelter from the rain. In that nod, Liam saw a decade collapse. He clutched the manila envelope and understood that losing someone isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the soft thud of a luxury car door closing. Maya had not planned to be anyone's rescue. She had spent her 20s in windowless rooms with maps taped to walls, learning to translate human need into zoning language. She believed in a city that could hold contradictions, a coffee shop next to a shelter, a park shared by a billionaire's dog and a fourth grader's kite. Harboring began as a sketch, 12 stories, of mixed-income housing, ground floor or daycare, a rooftop garden threaded with herbs. She pitched it with a calm that hid the tremor inside. The grant covered soft costs and community outreach. Construction money would require a miracle or a mogul. Adrienne Voss is interested, her program director had said, eyes gleaming with the relief of someone who didn't have to find the money herself. He likes legacy projects. He likes redemption. Stories. Maya didn't flinch at the word. Redemption had been weaponized in her vicinity lately. When Adrienne invited her to lunch at a quiet restaurant in South Lake Union, he listened more than he spoke. He watched people the way some men watch stocks. Harboring is elegant, he said, tapping the site plan. It will outlive us both. I hope so. She said, measuring him with the same tool she used for old buildings. Is it salvageable? I don't want your name on the facade, he smiled. What do you want to say home? He signed on as anchor funner, with a flourish that looked like generosity, and was also strategy. His donation came with covenants that read like silk. Advisory, oversight, veto power over contractors, first right of refusal on first-floor retail. We move faster. If I carry some of the weight, he said, bureaucracy will eat you alive. She remembered being eaten in smaller ways by doubts, by men who mistook her clarity for an invitation. She also remembered the smell of Liam's t-shirt, the one he wore when sketching late. Coffee and graphite, a home, her senses kept insisting, still existed. When she told Adrienne she was pregnant, she didn't cry in the quiet. After the sentence, he nodded a hand, moving a fraction toward her before retreating. You'll need a buffer, he said. Media funders. The city, people can be kind until they sense leverage. Come work from my office. Use my driver, let me absorb the noise. It sounded like a shield and felt like a net. She wanted to be strong enough to stand in rain and call it weather. But there was another truth. The fatigue that no nap called, the way the baby made decisions with her body. She thought of Liam. His apology text stacked like bricks, his silence between them louder, and decided that asking for help wasn't surrendered if she wrote the terms. Fine. She said, I'll use your office, but I keep control of the community process and no cameras unless I say. Yes. He inclined his head. Deal in his world. Rooms opened before she reached them. Assistance materialized with tea. The elevator learned her floor. But there were prices always. A board member referred to harboring as Meet's pet project and chuckled like that was cute. Adrienne cut him off with a glance that felt like a drawn blade. But the cut landed on Mia's nerves anyway. Nights were the hardest. Alone in her apartment on Capitol Hill, she listened to an old clock count seconds. She missed the small cruelties of marriage. The way Liam left cabinet doors open because they were evidence of proximity. She missed the way he said we when he meant I, and how he was learning. Furthermore, she missed who she'd been before. She had to be somebody else to survive him. On a gray Sunday she met her friend Nadia at Cal Anderson Park. Nadia handed her a thermos of ginger tea and the expression of someone who would help bury a body. If asked, are you with him? Nadia nodded toward a headline on her phone. Voss backs new housing venture. I'm with Harboring, Mia said, and the baby is mine. Mia said, and they both laughed, which made the tears easier. Later, Nadia squeezed her hand. You can do this with or without them. Mia nodded. The baby turned a gentle wrench, and she had the thought that surprised her with its sweetness. You and me, kid. We're going to build a home. Liam's office smelled like plan sets and stale coffee, and the ghost of a hope that hadn't vacuumed in a while. After the courthouse, he spent hours rearranging his books. then sat down and did nothing. He tried to sketch and produced an anxious knot. He tried to read zoning code and fell asleep. Waking with a start as though caught stealing, the firm Carter Atelier was two people and a contractor named Ree, who called him boss with cheerful sarcasm. "You, okay, man?" Ree asked, leaning in the doorway. "Define, okay?" Ree looked at him the way one looks at scaffolding, making sure it would hold. "We got the Capitol Hill Cafe. Reno demo starts Tuesday." "Right," Liam said, grateful for something that didn't require an apology. What he didn't say, Serena had texted that morning. "You are good." A simple rectangle of a message that made his stomach tilt. He typed and erased responses until his phone slid face down onto the desk like a felled bird. He met Nadia for coffee because he trusted her to tell him. When he was being ridiculous, she had met Maya first, then decided to tolerate Liam as an extension. That was how it felt sometimes. He was a plus one to his own life. "You looked like bad news," she said, handing him a croissant and narrowing her eyes. "What did you do after the courthouse?" "Went to the office, tried to work and failed at both. Good," she said. "Failing at work is a step. It means you aren't pretending it's fine. Do people come back from this?" he asked, surprising himself. "Not the marriage. I know that's an arrogance to assume. I mean from being the man who does the thing he swore he'd never do. Only if they stop narrating themselves as tragic heroes." Nadia sipped. "You aren't special. You're just someone who let a wound drive the car." He breathed out a laugh. "That's comforting in a way. What are you going to do?" she asked. "Work, stay sober around my phone, be present when Maya lets me be, and find out who Serena actually is." Nadia raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because it doesn't add up," he said, the thread tugging at his mind. "The way she showed up, the timing, the second meeting. I'm not saying I'm not responsible, I am. But I think I was also useful." "That is the most male sentence I've heard this week," Nadia said, then softened. "But maybe you're right. So find out. Just don't confuse detective work with penance." He nodded and went to the cafe site. He measured walls, listened to the building settle, took notes on how light curled at 3 p.m. A professional muscle remembering itself. In the evening, he walked without destination until the rain found him. He stopped in front of the Sorrento like a man studying the scene of a fire. He lit Liam. A voice said. Behind him, Serena Vale wore a mustard coat and the expression of someone who always found the camera. She tilted her head. "You ghosted," I imploded quietly. "That too." She said. "Not you, Nkindl. Why do you want to talk?" He did not. He also did. They sat in the lounge. He wrapped his hands around a club soda, like it might confess. "Who sent you?" he asked. Finally her smile cracked, which made her more beautiful and less dangerous. "What makes you think I was sent?" "The coincidence has bruises." She looked at her glass, then at him. "I work for a firm that arranges outcomes. Sometimes that means pairing donors with causes. Sometimes it means pairing inconvenient men with distractions." He swallowed. "Who hired you?" "I can't say can't or won't. Both," she said. And he saw abruptly a person trying to keep her job and her soul. "But I can say this. You were already falling." I was a well-timed gust. Rage and relief performed a clumsy dance in his chest. He chose neither. "Maya is pregnant," he said, because he needed Serena to know what story she'd touched. Serena flinched. "Liam." "I didn't know." I swear he believed her. He also hated that any of it required belief. "If you remember anything that helps me protect her about who wanted me out of her orbit, tell me." She nodded. "I'll try." She scribbled a number on a coaster. "That's my personal cell. If you call my work line, you'll get nothing but good morning." Outside, the rain had moderated to a fine insistence. Liam tucked the coaster in his pocket and thought of lines on a plan. Load-bearing, non-load-bearing, and how he had mistaken one for the other. He went home to an apartment that echoed, then wrote. Ira an email he didn't send. I am learning the shape of my absence, Serena. Vale's childhood taught her to read rooms faster than books. A mother who disappeared and returned with stories like loose buttons. A series of apartments that measured time in landlord footsteps. She learned that people who wanted something told prettier lies than people who wanted nothing. By 24, she was making a career out of deciphering desire. Her firm called it strategic influence. Clients called it discretion. She called it rent. When she was assigned Carter, she read his file like a script. Small firm, big ideals. Married to a woman on the cusp of a significant civic win. Targets. Vulnerabilities in bold, cash flow, anxiety. Masculine pride in recession. A history of quiet safford disguised as creative sacrifice. The client shielded. Payment routed through a donor-advised fund. Deliverables compromising appearance. Plausible rumor delay, emotional bandwidth. She told herself she was providing a nudge, not a shove. Then she met Liam. He looked at her the way honest men look at light, grateful and weary. She had not planned. Unliking him, that complicated the angles. After the Sorrento, she went home and sat on her clean couch and stared at the window. The city outside did its tremor and glow. She had texted her handler. Mission accomplished, she typed, and then deleted a second message. He's not built for this, and then chewed her lip until it stung. Second meeting had been orchestrated. A chance invitation to a breakfast panel. A random seating chart. Liam walked into the Kiko room as if into an echo of himself. She watched the struggle in his shoulders, and something in her unspoiled. When he left the lounge after their talk, she dialed her handler. I'm out. She said, you don't get to be out, the voice replied. A calm polished by office air. Then consider me. Inconvenient silence. Then a new voice. Older, empty of surprise. Serena, this is Adrien Voss. I hear you're interfering with an arrangement. She stood. The name disoriented her the way turbulence does when you've forgotten. You're in the sky, Mr. Voss, she said. Buying a second too. I don't know what arrangement you mean. He ignored the lie with professional courtesy. You were retained to help Mr. Carter move on from a marriage that no longer served either party. She laughed. Because lies deserve laughter sometimes. Is that what we're calling it? It's what it was, he said. Almost gentle. You know, the line between fate and intervention is mostly narrative. Tell the pregnant woman that. He didn't speak for a beat. When he did, his voice shifted, smaller, less iron. I didn't know she was pregnant. Now you do. I don't want her harmed, he said, and Serena heard a tone she had not expected. Protectiveness with a fissure. End your involvement. No more contact with Liam. Consider your contract concluded and my fee paid. Of course. She hung up and stared at her ceiling until the bumpiness in her chest settled. She began to keep a separate folder, emails that smelled of rot, memos about narrative friction, a timeline that mapped to Maya's due date like a shadow. She wasn't a whistleblower. Furthermore, she was someone who recognized a cliff when she saw one and had decided to stop pushing. When Liam asked who had hired her, she could not say, because power hires multiple masks, but she could bring a match to the fog. She sent him a single email that night from a new account. Look at Harbor Lights ground lease addendum. The one your ex signed with advisory oversight. She closed her laptop and exhaled. She was not a heroine. Furthermore, she wanted to sleep through the next month and wake up in a life with less explanation. The city did not promise her that. It promised nothing, which was in its way honest. Adrien Voss refused to be surprised by storms. He preferred owning umbrellas in advance. His wealth was an accumulation of contingencies. A shipping startup flipped before the crash. A real estate portfolio assembled before neighborhoods learned their names. A chain of data centers that hummed under green roofs. He'd married once, briefly, to a woman who looked at his calendar like a Competing empire. The divorce settlement was generous and quiet. He learned the cost of affection. Marketed as equity. NER did not present like an acquisition. She presented like a standard he had not met. When she spoke about Harbor Light, she drew lines from history to now, from policy to porch light. And he saw his money change costume from power to penance. He had not consciously set out to detonate a marriage. He had, however, learned that some partnerships were friction points. Furthermore, he had also learned how to help fate along without leaving. Fingerprints. The firm that found Serena had been recommended by a man who owed Adrienne a favor. The favor had been called in with 3 sentences and no nouns. When Serena said the word pregnant, he stepped to the window of his corner office and looked out at a city he could move and not change. He thought of his mother, a nurse's aide, who had believed that money meant problems ended when the bills were paid. He wished that were true. Furthermore, he went to Mayor's apartment that evening, not because he doubted her strength, but because he understood the difficulty of absorbing kindness while building a fortress. Furthermore, he brought soup. It was a clumsy gesture, but sincerity, unpracticed, always looks like thrift store clothing. You don't have to bring food, she said at the door, smiling despite herself. I don't have to do. Most things I do, he said. This one seemed harmless. They ate at her small table. The clock counted outside. Rain tattooed the awning. I spoke to someone today, he said, finally. A person I shouldn't need to speak to. She told me some news I should have learned from you. But I didn't. I'm sorry for that. Maya watched him the way you watch a dog. You can't read. Curious. Cautious. I would have told you this week, she said. I was trying to say it, without making it about you. Nothing is about me that I don't make about me, he said dry. Surprised by his own cancer. I want to help Maya, not own, not decorate. Help. You don't get to do only the parts of help that make you feel noble, she said. And the sentence landed between them with the satisfying weight of something true. You come with brightly colored strings. I have a baby to grow. I have a project to shepherd. I have a spine. In case you missed it. He laughed softly, noted. She looked at him, really looked. Seeing beyond the magazine gloss. Why harboring? Why me? He could have said branding. He could have said legacy. Furthermore, he could have said the truth disguised as strategy. He said, because once, when I was a boy, we lived in a car for a month while my mother waited for a rent check. Because a woman with a clipboard told us we were lucky to get a motel voucher. Because I think about that word every time I enter a building under my name. I am tired of building towers that look at the water and pretend they're kinder than they are. Maya's face softened. Thank you for not lying. I try to save my lies for the market. He said it hasn't made me many friends. Money's friends are conditional. She said, you know this. Yes. He hesitated. I also know I made a mess by trying to clean quietly. She didn't ask for details. She didn't want the wallpaper peeled back farther than necessary. Here are my terms, she said. Steady. You fund without veto. You advise when asked. Furthermore, you never speak to anyone who can influence my life without telling me first. And if I say no cameras, it means no cameras. He nodded, agreed. In a dream. If the father of my child shows up differently than he has, you don't get to decide. I need protecting from that either. The word father landed like a new staircase. He felt something in himself accept a limit and unclench. Understood. He left that night aware of a new gravity. Power recognizes with both resentment and relief. The rare person who was not dazzled by it. He had a line to walk. Now influence without insertion. He had never done that well. He would try later, in bed, with his city lit outside the window. He thought of Serena's voice. Brittle and brave. He thought about ending his distance with a phone call that said, don't do this again, he texted instead. Contract concluded. Stay safe. It felt like washing. A knife you shouldn't have used. Liam sat on his floor with documents like fallen snow. He'd requested the Harbor Light file as a concerned citizen and been granted a redacted avalanche. He found it by accident at first. A clause tucked into an addendum. Almost nobody reads unless paid. Advisory oversight extended to approval rights in the case of material deviations from progress timeline. Defined by a schedule, the funders board set. If the city delayed permits, which cities do like breathing, the fund could intervene to ensure project viability, including temporary leadership adjustments. He stared until the words arranged into the shape of a trap. He called Serena's new number with his heart in his throat. "I found it," he said when she answered. "Good," she said, relief rusting her voice. "You were part of this," he said. Not a question and not an accusation. "Exactly. I was part of a machine," she said. "We're all part of machines. I'm trying to stop mine from grinding your ex-wife's life. What do I do?" he asked, and the humility of it felt like a borrowed shirt that finally fit. "Tell Maya." Serena said. "Share it from you if you've built a bridge. Since you burned the last one." He wrote the email 3 times. He deleted all 3. He texted, "Harbor Light addendum gives Thunder power to replace you if permits are delayed. Please look, this isn't to win points. It's to warn." He put his phone down and picked it up and put it down again until the device became an enemy. No reply. He didn't deserve one. He went to the cafe site and worked until his body remembered satisfaction. He ate a sandwich sitting on an overturned crate and didn't scroll. That night he showed up at a recovery group meeting in a church basement. Though his addiction was not a substance, but a behavior that numbed like one, he listened to men and women talk about the wreckage of choices that felt like oxygen at the time when it was his turn. He stood. "I'm Liam," he said, voice thinner than usual. "I'm here because I broke a promise and then broke myself." Trying to narrate that as character development. Furthermore, "I'm here because I want to be a father who doesn't need a crisis to do the right thing." After a man named Horse clapped him on the shoulder. "You're in the right room," he said. "We don't do magic here. But we do time. Time, it turned out, provided responses. At midnight, Maya replied to his text. "I saw the clause. I hate that. Furthermore, I needed you to find it for me. But I'm grateful you did. We'll talk at the community meeting tomorrow. Don't make it about you," he wrote. Understood. The community meeting at the neighborhood center was the kind that makes democracy look beautiful and itchy. Folding chairs, bad coffee, a whiteboard with Harbor its bullet points. Maya stood at the front, tired and luminous. Adrienne stood to the side. An observer with a wallet. Liam sat in the back row. "Because humility has geography. I want to be transparent about funding," Maya said. Marker. Clicking. "There's an addendum that gives our fund more power than I'm comfortable with. We will amend it." An older woman raised her hand. "Baby, can you amend a billionaire?" Laughter rippled. Then quiet. "We can amend a contract," Maya said. "And we can change who's invited to the table. That includes everyone here." Adrienne stepped forward, unexpected, microphoneless. "I support the amendment," he said. "No veto power. Advisory only. I want this project to serve the community, not my ego." A man in a baseball cap muttered, "Funny way to say that, with a watch like that." But the room nodded afterward. In the parking lot's wet sodium light, Maya approached Liam. He got to his feet too fast, nerves spiking. "Thank you," she said. The words were bruised and warm. He nodded. "You don't owe me that." "Maybe not," she said, "but it's true." He forced himself to keep the conversation simple. "I'm redesigning a cafe," he blurted. Then winced at himself. "That's not relevant." "It is," she said, smiling unexpectedly. "I liked when you talked about light." He looked at her and saw flickering The habit of us. He also saw the weight in her shoulders, the reservation. Furthermore, he swallowed the useless sentence that scratched his throat. I miss you, and replaced it with something serviceable. If you need me to talk to the permitting team, I can. I know a couple of inspectors. I know what words help. Furthermore, I will ask if I need that, she said, setting a boundary with elegance. And Liam. The baby's heartbeat is strong. His eyes burned. He nodded. Good. A car door clicked. Adrienne's driver. The Bentley waited. Black and inevitable. Maya touched Liam's arm. A gratitude that didn't promise anything. Then crossed the lot toward the different weather of another man's resources. Liam watched her go and felt, for the first time since he'd broken his life, not only the hunger to have her back, but the hunger to become the kind of man who could be accounted for. The city council chamber smelled like polish and performance. Albright's hearing had drawn a crowd. Activists with hand-painted signs. Developers in suits the color of influence. Neighbors with grievances folded into their coat pockets. Liam found a seat near the aisle. Serena slid into the row behind him wearing a black dress. Like a statement, I'm here. And I see. Maya sat at the front with her team. She looked pale but steady. Adrienne took a seat 3 rows back. A deliberate demotion. The council chair tapped her. Microphone. We are here to consider the Harbor Light proposal, she intoned. We will hear from the applicant. Then the public. Maya spoke first. She talked about design as empathy. About elevators that smell like fresh paint instead of fear. She talked about rent. Structures that left room for groceries. Furthermore, she did not talk about heartbreak or billionaires or the baby rolling under her ribs. Like a new moon, her voice only wavered once on the word home. Then came the parade. A landlord who didn't like the way affordable sounded on his block. A teacher with a story about a student sleeping in a car behind the school. A man who kept saying property values like a prayer. Nadia spoke crisp as a bell. We're not building a burden, she said. We're building a future where my goddaughter doesn't have to memorize the bus routes of shelters. When it was Adrienne's turn, he stood and did the thing billionaires do when they try to be small. I am providing funding, he said. I am not, as of last night, holding veto power. Furthermore, I will not profit from harboring. Furthermore, I request that you hold me publicly to that. Murmurs. The council chair arched an eyebrow. That's unusual. So is sleeping in a car, he said. Serena leaned forward, whisper soft. He did the right thing fast to avoid doing the right thing slow, she said. And Liam couldn't tell if that was a compliment. Then a woman approached the microphone with a printout, clutched like evidence. This, she said, is an investigative piece I was sent. And she glanced at Serena. It suggests that certain influences were applied to the personal life of Harbor Lights planner. The air changed. Maya went still the way a forest goes still when a match appears. The chair frowned. We don't adjudicate personal matters here. Except when personal becomes political, the woman said. Quoting someone or everybody, Serena stood. I need to speak. She said I was part of a consulting engagement that facilitated a situation which hurt a person who didn't deserve it. That person is Maya Ortega. I cannot name my client. I can say that my actions were unethical, and I regret them. Gasps. Phones lifted like a field of small suns. Maya's cheeks flushed, then cooled. She stood and leaned toward the mic. My private life is not a public process, she said, voice low, iron-laced. But since we're here, I am pregnant. The father is my ex-husband, who is not perfect and is also trying the fun of Harbor. Lifetime has agreed to relinquish power that does not belong to him, and a woman who contributed to my pain is choosing to stop. None of that changes whether Seattle needs places for people to sleep and sing and make lunches. Approve this project or don't. Based on its merits, I will not be leveraged. Silence held. Then a smattering of applause grew into something sturdier. The chair rapped her gavel, irritated at the display of feeling. Order, she said, ordering people who'd already organized themselves into belief. During a recess, Mia slipped into the hallway. Liam followed at a respectful distance, then stopped when he saw her wobble. She braced her hand on the wall. He reached her in 3 steps. Sit, he said, guiding her to a bench. I'm fine, she said. Not fine. Breathe, he said. In for 4. Out for 6. She obeyed, because sometimes obedience is wisdom. Color returned to her mouth. She leaned back, eyes closed. Adrenaline approached urgency. Barely leashed, he stopped when he saw Liam's hand on the bench, not possessive, just present. He lowered himself onto the opposite end. I'm okay, Myers said, eyes still closed. If one more man asks me if I'm okay, I will regulate private capital out of this city with my mind. They laughed because the alternative, for all 3 of them, was worse. Thank you, she said. After a moment, she opened her eyes. Both of you and you, she added, looking at Serena, who hovered like an apology in heels. Someday we can talk, not today. Serena nodded throat. Working back in the chamber. The vote landed like weather, 6-3 in favor. Conditions. Amendments, oversight. Yes, but the yes mattered. People hugged people they didn't know. A man cried into a mariner's cap. Maya stood very still, absorbing victory and exhaustion, then bent a slow fold. Liam caught her before the floor did. The room shifted into motion. Paramedics spoke gently. It's probably blood pressure, one said. Happens at the hospital. In a room that smelled like lemon and worry, they listened to a rapid, insistent thrum. The baby announced itself like drums in a parade. Strong heartbeat, the nurse said. Strong kid. Maya looked at Liam's face as he listened. Hands shaking. He was grief and astonishment and something else. A man letting love be larger than shame. Adrienne watched from the doorway. A hand braced on the jamb, eyes unreadable. He nodded once to Liam. Liam nodded back. It felt like a ceasefire negotiated by a third party. A small person with a fierce metronome. If Maya had believed that a heartbeat would solve the geometry, she would have forgotten her training. Cities don't simplify. They complicate and clarify by turns. The paternity test. That was data. It arrived on a Tuesday with the bluntness of a utility. Bill. Liam was the father. The paper didn't promise trust or marriage or a Dover. It promised a baby who would inherit their eyes and their mistakes, and if they did it right, their better choices. Liam wept when he read the results in his car. He texted Maya, "Thank you for letting me test. I don't take lightly what this means. I'm here not only when it's beautiful." She replied, "You're welcome. Let's talk about a schedule after my next scan." He talked to a lawyer, Alana Chu, recommended by Nadia, who said the words parenting plan like a map. She'd walked. Don't fight for more than you can sustain. She said. Don't promise more than you can deliver. Demonstrate. Don't declare. He nodded and made appointments with his therapist like laying bricks. He told his team at the atelier that he'd be taking afternoons for birth-in classes and doctor visits. Ray clapped. Boss is going to learn hospital corners, he said. And the office laughed a sound that felt like Adrien called a press conference to say nothing substantive and everything important. Voss Properties relinquish any veto power over harboring and will support the project under the guidance of Ms. Ortega and the city. Reporters asked if he was running for office. He said that would require a tolerance for public affection I do not possess. He returned to his office and made calls that mattered more and drew headlines less. To supply chains, to contractors who cut corners where nobody watched, To an old friend with influence over permits, whose integrity he respected enough not to pressure. Serena, meanwhile, told her firm to keep the last payment, consider it the price of sleeping. She said she sent Maya a long email with no ask, only a record how she'd been hired when by whom. The names were redacted by NDAs. But the footprints were large. I won't publish, she wrote. This isn't about spectacle. It's about balance. Mia replied with 2 words that have repaired more rooms than speeches. Thank you. The next month's braided ordinary life with high stakes. Meyer's belly grew. Albright's foundation poured. Liam installed shelving at the cafe and learned how to fold tiny onesies without crying. He attended a birth class in a room where everyone assumed he was still married. And he did not correct them because the correction would take an hour and a T-chart. On a Thursday, Maya invited both men to the site. The concrete cured under a sky that had finally learned blue again. She wore a hard hat that said Ortega in black letters, like a declaration of jurisdiction. We will need a permanent governance board, she said, with residents on it. Adrienne, you can have a seat if you want one, but not chair. Liam, you don't get a seat because I love you and will keep boundaries between home and work. Liam grinned. That's fair. Adrienne nodded. I will fund an endowment for the board's operations, he said. No strings on record. Maya looked at him, measuring again. Thank you. They stood and watched a crane move. The city hummed, people carrying groceries, arguing about parking, kissing by bus stops. Living. Maya felt the baby roll and put a hand on her stomach. An unconscious benediction. Name. Liam asked for the baby. I have 2 in mind. Maya said if it's a girl, Isabel. If it's a boy, Mateo. After my grandparents, they built their own house, Liam said, remembering the story of boards and nails and neighbors who showed up. Yes, she said. It fell down once. They built it again. Serena texted a photo that afternoon of a storefront in the Central District, a sign in the window. Vale & Co. Community Advocacy. Crisis to cause. She had taken her skill set and reframed it. The homepage said, we tell true stories faster than lies. Underneath, sliding scale services, a link to donate, a link to volunteer. Maya forwarded the link to Nadia, who replied with a string of celebratory emojis and a single sentence. Sometimes the villain wrote her own exit. At night, when the city quieted to its secret volume, Maya sat by her window and allowed herself to imagine the postpartum hours. The ache and flood, the baby's serious face, the way love would rearrange her molecules. She also allowed space for sorrow, for the marriage that had become a ghost, with good intentions. She honored both. It felt like worship and like accounting. Labor arrived the way storms do when you live near water. Inevitable and a little theatrical. It was a Saturday in June. The sky was clean. Maya felt the first contraction in line at a farmer's market holding plums. She texted Liam. It's time. She texted Adrien. The driver is not necessary. She texted Nadia. Bring the overnight bag and don't let the internet find us. The hospital room had a window with a view of cranes and water. It felt right to bring a builder into a world of construction. Liam arrived breathless and calm. He had practiced his breathing in the car, counting lampposts. Nadia moved like she'd done this before, which she had with her sister. Adrienne waited in the family area with coffee and a book and the expression of a man learning patience as a language. Mia labored for hours, a long swim to a shore she could not yet see. Pain dismantled her and rebuilt her as someone who could ferociously insist. Liam was astonishing in his willingness to be told exactly what to do and to do. Only that. Press here, she said. He pressed. Don't talk. He didn't tell me a story, she said. And he did. The one about a coffee shop corner where morning light made strangers look holy. When the baby finally slid into the world, she cried with outrage and then with the relief of oxygen. Isabel. Maya said a name and a prayer. The nurse placed the small damp human on her chest. Isabel blinked. Confused and ancient. Liam cried in a way that rearranged his face. He looked at Mia with reverence and apology and awe, and for once he did not try to braid them into an argument. Later, when the room had settled, Adrien knocked and entered. Like a man entering a church, he brought flowers. That did not smell like flowers. He looked at Isabel with a surprised eye. He did not hide hello. He said the word new in his mouth. You are very small. Do you want to hold her? Maya asked. He frowned, startled, then nodded. He washed his hands. The way reporters always forget to describe thoroughly with attention. Furthermore. He sat and Maya handed him Isabel. Furthermore. He held her like a contract and then forgot to be careful because love arrived and knocked the numbers out of his head. Isabel grunted, unimpressed and enchanted. He exhaled. She has your focus, he said to Maya. And your stubbornness, he said to Liam. Surprising them both, they laughed. The moment braided something that had been frayed. Weeks later, harbor lights, ribbon cutting unfolded. The building rose, clean and intentional, with balconies like smiles and a daycare entrance painted with constellations. The sign at the front read, harboring in letters that would patent and nicely. No donor names. At the podium. Maya spoke about beginnings and maintenance. The work, she said, isn't cutting a ribbon. It's showing up on a Tuesday when the elevator needs repair and the daycare teacher has the flu and somebody's late on rent because life happened. The work is unglamorous. The work is why we're here. The crowd cheered because they were happy and because happiness is a public good. Residents moved in pushing carts, carrying plants. Girl in a pink shirt pointed at the rooftop garden and gasped. Tomatoes. She shouted at nobody in particular. Serena stood in the back, watching and not taking credit. Her new nonprofit had a table with a mismatched tablecloth and a stack of flyers. She'd raised enough money to hire 2 staff members and pay herself barely more than rent. Adrien shook hands and then stepped away to watch the building be used. He put his phone in his pocket and let an email from a reporter go unanswered. He would continue to be a man with more access than most and a tendency to oversteer. But he had learned something about letting other people drive. Liam carried Isabel, now 3 months old, in a sling. She slept with the serene selfishness of the beloved. He had repaired most of the damage at the cafe, which now smelled like cardamom and good decisions. He and Ma had established a rhythm that didn't pretend to be marriage. Shared calendars. Thursday dinners with Isabel, Sundays where he took her to the park, so Mia could nap. Furthermore, he was lonely and content, alternating measures. Furthermore, he had learned to let both be true. Maya walked the hallways and memorized noises. She stopped in the daycare and cried when a toddler handed her a plastic carrot. She walked to the rooftop garden and touched basil. Furthermore, she stood at the edge and looked out at a city that had tried to swallow her and had failed because she was INDIGESTIBLE. At sunset, she found Liam by the west-facing windows. They stood next to each other, not touching, inventorying what they had kept. I thought redemption would feel like a trumpet, Liam said. But it feels like dish soap and apologies that don't require an answer. Trumpets are for parades, she said. This is urban maintenance. He smiled. Do you ever think about us? She said. Uncomplicated, of course. But the answer I keep getting is that loving someone doesn't mean you have to live with them. It means you live with your love for them until it changes shape. That sounds like you. He said. It sounds like me. She agreed, which is not the same as victory, and better. Below them, the daycare lights blinked. On a balcony, a woman watered a plant and danced a little to a song. only she could hear. The city exhaled. Harbor light glowed. Nadia appeared with paper cups of cola. The fancy kind to home, she said to home. They repeated. And drank. And let the word be a place and a practice. Isabel woke and demanded. The moon. Someone would figure out a way to show her where it slept. If the story found you. If you felt the sting of betrayal, the slow courage of repair, or the quiet relief of boundaries that hold. Stick around. On this channel we tell humanized epics, messy, layered and honest enough to feel like Tuesday night. If Harbor Lifetime made you believe a little more in second chances, hit the like button so others can find this story. Share it with someone rebuilding from the inside out. And if you want more cinematic tales about imperfect people choosing better, subscribe and ring the bell. New stories are on the way. In the comments, tell me the moment you'd frame on your wall. The council vote, the hospital, heartbeat, the rooftop garden. I'll be reading and writing the next chapter, so stay tuned and subscribe.